Meeting you where you are. The meaning behind the slogan is that we meet the community where they are, on their journey towards holistic health, a plant-based lifestyle, and veganism, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. We do this through people, food, events, and culture. Our 6 pillars are birth, eating, education, empowerment, enlightenment, and events. We are Black Veg Society.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Veg Society's first ever youth panel, created to illuminate voices of youth activists. My name is Kennedy Little. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a youth mentee for Black Veg Society. Black Veg Society is a nonprofit organization based in Maryland whose mission is to educate Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities on the importance of holistic living, veganism, all while building a community centered around healthy, accessible, and sustainable food, and a focus on compassionate lifestyle choices. We are so excited to present a panel on the incredible passions, visions, and projects of 4 inspirational youth activists. Before we get started, I would like to highlight BVS's new youth event titled called A Children's Veg Fest, which is coming to Baltimore this summer. BVS is partnering with Baltimore City Recreation and Parks for a June Children's Festival at the newly developed Cherry Hill Baltimore Health and Wellness Center. The focus of the festival will be on healthy eating, environmentalism, the arts, culture, and compassion for animals. More details will be coming soon. To learn more about Black Veg Society and ways that you can support the many initiatives, you can visit blackvegsociety.org. So without further ado, let me introduce our incredible youth panel for tonight, and let's go ahead and bring them on. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So the first youth activist that we have with us tonight is Maya Miller. And Maya is a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania, and she is intending to major in environmental studies. In the past, she has worked on a sustainable farm and helped bring composting to her high school cafeteria. In her free time, she enjoys drawing, planting, and taking pictures of the natural world. And Maya, we're so happy to have you as a part of this panel tonight.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. Next, we have Ezra Kleinbaum, who is a high school student and a community organizer based in the Boston area. They have successfully worked to bring vegan options to every meal at every high school in the public schools of Brookline, Massachusetts. Their passion lies at the intersection of animal liberation and climate justice. Welcome, Ezra, and wow, we can't wait to dive into all these amazing things you all are doing.
Thank you, Kennedy. I'm really glad to be here.
Next, we have Sarahjeet Dosanjh. Sarah is a second-year public health undergraduate major at the University of California, Los Angeles. She is interested in plant-based nutrition and plant-centric food systems, particularly in intersecting with public health. In her free time, she enjoys hiking, baking, and organizing events with her plant-oriented organizations at UCLA. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Kennedy. Well, wonderful to be here.
Awesome. And for our final participant, or I'm actually not participant, for our final panelist, we have Morgan, and she is passionate about creating a vegan world for over 10 years and is currently a freshman at New York University studying biochemistry. In high school, she successfully campaigned for a daily vegan cafeteria option throughout her school district, hosted several tabling events to raise awareness about the consequences of dairy consumption, and created award-winning short films about the environment and animal agriculture. She is continuing these efforts as campaign coordinator at the Greener by Default Coalition at NYU and loves going for hikes in nature during her free time. I also want to add that Morgan was one of the first place winners for Food Empowerment Project's writing contest. So welcome, Morgan, and we're so happy to have all of you all.
Thank you so much.
So once again, thank you all for being here. And for everyone that's watching, there is a goal for tonight, and that is to really reach the hearts and minds of many individuals that are in the vegan advocacy world, and to show that a lot of youth have the power to make change in this realm that we're all in. We have so many different visions and passions, and many of us just want to be heard and have a seat at the table in order to make these changes that we believe need to be done in the world. So we're so excited to express ourselves throughout this panel, and to hopefully inspire other young people who want to make change within this space, and also hopefully to begin making steps in the right direction for all young people, of course, that want to make those really powerful initiatives. So for my first question, it is, what got you all started in vegan advocacy and social justice? And anyone can go first.
Yeah, I can start us off. For me, I grew up in a family that loved to hike. So I was constantly in the environment, nature, and I just fell in love with everything around me. And I always felt this sense of urgency within me to protect our planet and protect the environment around us. So about 4 years ago, I was introduced to the environmental impacts of factory farming when Farm Sanctuary actually visited my school. And because of that, I decided to do the New Roots Institute program, which, if you don't know, they are like an educational program that equips students with knowledge and advocacy tools for the future. And the more I just learned about animal agriculture through New Roots, I realized all these intersectionalities, whether it's the animal rights, the social justice aspect, the health. It was just all very aligned with me and my morals and ethics, who I wanted to be as a person and how I wanted to live my life. And so I decided that this is what I want to do with my life, and I want to keep pursuing this in every step of my day. And I also realized that this issue extended beyond my personal choices, and it's something that I wanted to incorporate into my career, given the importance of it. So now, to my day-to-day, I just do work to advocate for a just and plant-centric food system. So I've done it in my school cafeteria in high school, or at a federal level with K-12 school foods, and now at my university as well, just working to bring change on campus in the broader LA area.
That's so incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah.
I can go next. I first sort of entered this space when I was in 7th grade. And for me, it came when my brother really likes to cook. He always watches like the Great British Bake Off and all those kinds of cooking shows and cooking YouTube channels. And I was with him one day, and he was watching a video about how salami was made. And it was very much like a sort of high and fancy like recipe type thing, wasn't showing slaughterhouse footage. But I remember very, very clearly it had big pigs that could run around through these big fields of sweet corn and eat all the sweet corn that they wanted. And that's how the video started. And then, 2, 3 minutes later, when the video ended, it was just salami on a plate, right? The pigs were dead. And so something clicked in my mind when I watched that video with my brother, and I was like, wow, that's really not okay. What happens in between the salami and the field of sweet corn? And so I did a little bit of Googling and very quickly went vegan and then connected with activists in my area.
Thank you for sharing that, Ezra. I think that you and I maybe made that realization at the same age. And mine was also just like through witnessing what happens within the animal agriculture industry and how there is that connection there, and how for a lot of us, it's completely hidden from society. And we never really make that conscious thought until we actually take the time to look into the industry. So thank you for sharing that.
Right. I can go next. Age. I've always been very fast. My mom used to put National and Animal Planet, and I would just be very intrigued. And then in my sophomore year, in my school's environmental defense, a lot of things, we started climate change and then how that, and I thought that it wasn't get a say in the environment that they were living in to protect the animals that and so I initiative in my high school from landfills because at that time I was capable of and this was very accomplished. And I advocated on Capitol plant-based foods in school meals. Very familiar with policy, so interesting and impact. And then since those moments continue along that path of environment, and for
That's so awesome, Maya. I love how you have a passion for not only animals, but also learning about how the animal agriculture industry causes a lot of harm to the environment and just like how all those things are so connected. And that's such an amazing space to be in. So thank you. And then Morgan.
Yeah, so I grew up always loving animals and considered myself an avid animal lover. And I would still consume them. And then I got pet fish and I was out to dinner eating sushi. And I looked down at my plate and realized that I was eating fish. And I thought back to my fish who were back at home in their tank. And something just clicked and I realized that I didn't want to eat the animals that I loved anymore. And so I went vegetarian in third grade, and then I was really, really passionate and just always trying to bring up conversations about our food system and animals. And I gave a speech in sixth grade at my school about eating animals. And then I did a lot more research and realized that the dairy industry is essentially the same thing and so intertwined. And I ended up going vegan after reading lots of books, specifically Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. I'd really recommend that one. So then I went vegan and decided I wanted to kind of take it a step further and get involved in advocacy. So like Sarah also did, I did the New Roots summer internship and made so many friends and connections there. And then after that, I worked to get vegan options offered at my high school's cafeteria, and now I'm at college and am continuing to advocate for plant-based options.
Once again, another incredible story. I find so many connections to each of your roles, whether it be doing a similar internship or going vegan by a similar reason, or also having a really big interest within the environment. So I really love how a lot of these things that we have so much overlap. And moving on to our next question, what must youth be and why must youth be involved in all of this societal change? Several of you all have mentioned how veganism has many different outlets, and we might find ourselves maybe one day attending a meeting about like the environment or different social justice things, or maybe organizing in our own communities. So why is it important for youth to be in each one of these boxes?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, Kennedy. And I think similar to a lot of other movements that are around societal change, there's a lot of focus on the future and the longevity of it and how it needs to keep on going for a long time. It's not just a one-day thing or 1 year type of deal. And I think similarly, I've heard a lot in this space, especially when we're talking about food, since that's a very integral part of veganism, that there's a lot of talks like the future of food when we think about like alternatives and how our food system's going to change or how dietary patterns going to change. But I don't often hear future also be associated with youth, who are the ones that are pivoting the future, right? They're going to be the ones making the future, our generation. And it's a bit corny, but I really do believe that youth are the future. And if we're looking for a type of societal change that's long term and will be very broad and all throughout society as well, then it is important that we invest and empower youth to actually join in on the change as well. And they need space in this movement too, because ultimately we're going to be the next generation of CEOs, politicians, community organizers, investors, researchers, clinical providers. So if we want to achieve this sort of intersectional change we're seeking, it's really crucial that we actually equip and involve this next generation of leaders to do so.
Could not agree more. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Sarah makes a really good point about just in terms of the longevity of the movement. Like if we want it to continue past the next however many years, there need to be young people who are going to be involved and take that over later. But also, when we talk about making changes in society, making changes in the world, young people are the people who are going to be in the world, who are going to experience these changes however many years from now. And so I think it's really important for young people to be involved in creating their own future, because that's the future that we are going to live in.
Yeah, I both points. I mean, we're already now. There are rising sea levels, more fires. I mean, our world it's currently dying, and there needs to be some change in order to prevent, the downfall of future generations. And in order to prevent that, the youth really need to be involved, because we are going to be in the center of the climate crisis. So we need to be able to mitigate and adapt to its effects.
I love what all of you have said, and I think you all spoke really well about this. And one thing that I think is also an aspect of it is that, like, we as youth, I feel like have the most energy and passion for this topic. A lot of older people and adults that I've talked to, some of them have kind of thought like, "Oh, this isn't really my problem because I won't be around by the time it gets bad enough." And I think youth really feel that sense of urgency in a deeper way than older generations do. And we already have that energy and passion within us. And now we just need support from established organizations and adults and people already working full time in the movement to help us align what our interests are with furthering the movement. And that doesn't necessarily need to mean like having our full time job being at a certain organization that is moving the movement forward. It could also be like, for example, I'm interested in science and I'm majoring in biochemistry, and that can kind of relate to a lot of different things like plant-based health and alternative protein development. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how I can, align the degree that I'm getting with the movement that I want to fight for.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with these comments more. Something that I know one organization is focusing on, Food Empowerment Project, their goal is to really try to give youth that platform in order to create change. Because unfortunately, a lot of these issues like we have, like Maya, you mentioned, climate crisis, global warming, unadequate healthcare for a lot of people. These are things that have been caused because of really corrupt decisions made by people who are supposed to serve and protect us. And now, unfortunately, a lot of youth are having to be at the forefront and at the front lines of these, really atrocities that we're having to face. And so it's important that youth have the ability to equip ourselves and to have the tools in order to make the change that we want to see, especially in these spaces that we ourselves are passionate about. So really great comments, you all. Thank you all so much. And moving on to another question. Sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about youth in really any movement, especially now with technology. It's super easy to make those things a lot more perpetuated. And for us, a lot of that is untrue. And so what are some misconceptions about the abilities of youth related to position and power?
Yeah, I can start this one off as well. I think something I've noticed a lot is that being young for many has been synonymous to being very ignorant or mature or just uneducated of what the real world is like. And regardless or not if this is true for the individual, I think it often leads to people brushing off the abilities of the entire youth population because we are just still growing and developing as individuals. And I see that often leads to a lot of invalidation of our potential or our visionary ideas and perspectives that we may have, but that other age demographics may not have because they didn't grow up in the same climate crisis or advocacy space that they did, perhaps. And so I think like the biggest misconception is that we have the abilities and skills. They just need to be fostered and developed and mentored on. Like I've been fortunate enough to have several fantastic mentors that cultivated my vision and abilities. And I think that's what every young person deserves as well. And I guess the second thing is that I feel like a lot of people think we don't have our own voice or perspective a lot of the time of what we want to do or what we want to see happen. But it's not true. I mean, I think every person I've met in this space, they have so much to say about what they believe in and what they want to see happen. And they want their voice out there. And I think that people need to understand that just to really get rid of that association between young and just not like having a valid opinion because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that a lot of times youth are thought of as not really having as many skills or the skill sets needed for, higher level positions. And that is true. But, you know, from my experience, all of the people that I've met within the veganism movement have been just like still are um, really incredible and inspiring people who have a lot of drive and ability regardless of age. And I think that, especially within the movement, a lot of us have a really strong sense of purpose. And that really helps us, be able to take on challenges and learn new skills because we have this vision for a world that we want to create and we have that kind of guiding us. And so, yeah, the misconception being that, youth aren't ready to work or intern with very developed places. And I think the reality is that we really are, especially when we have this energy and passion behind it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people think that youth are unaware or just really don't care about what's going on. But, we offer a different perspective that older generations may not have. For instance, I was able to attend the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, and we had a roundtable discussion about, health-related issues and nutrition in America and waste. And I was able to talk about the composting program in my school. And, they would have, they may have never known about waste management on the school level because, they have long passed that age. So I feel like, what's going on in our lives is important for their knowledge.
I think also this sort of ties into the last question as well, but we can look we can look at like any social movement in the past and see that young people played an integral role in any successful social movement in the past. So we're not just sitting here speculating. You can actually look at what's been successful in the past and see that young people sort of have to be a part of that. And if and oftentimes it is true that young people have less experience, have fewer skills as a result of that, like Morgan was saying. But if that's the case, like it's not about being less smart. Young people are just as smart, just as capable. If we often lack experience just because we haven't existed, been alive for as long as older people, we just need to learn. And for older people to sort of shut us down or not take us seriously because we haven't learned things, that's counterproductive. If people who have experience, have skills, have knowledge, need to teach people regardless of whether or not they're young. There are things that I've taught people who are older than me, and just as I learn from people who are older than me and younger than me, and we just sort of all need to teach each other so that we have the skills and we build up the experience to be able to be effective activists together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for answering that question. And what I'm hearing from a lot of us is that we just need to be taught these skills. For some of us that might not have that knowledge in that area, we're fast learners. We can pick up on it. There's no reason for us to be completely shut out of that particular opportunity just because we don't have the exact skills for that job. We can always be taught. And I also hear that we need to be everywhere. Like just because maybe we might be passionate in one particular area doesn't mean that we have to stop there. We need to be in government. We need to be in a lot of different areas in order to push for these changes that we want. So I really, really admire what you all have had to say about that. But as we talked about misconception, there's also threats that come towards youth, and they can come in many forms. And so I want to hear from you all. Do you think that there are particular threats within the vegan movement that particularly affect young people?
I can start this one. Yes, absolutely. I think so. There certainly has been, particularly in recent years, a push to center a lot of movements around youth voices, to lift up youth voices. And I think that's amazing. And it needs to be done in a non-performative way. And I think a big threat to youth activists in a lot of activism today is that it's done sort of performatively. They're brought to the table not because their ideas are going to be taken seriously, but because everyone wants to say they have a young person at the table. And I think that is, not only does it feel really bad, but it's like counterproductive. It's if we take young people seriously, we're just going to be more effective and we're all going to be better for it. So I think that's sort of the biggest threat to young people as activists today. And that's certainly something that I've experienced. And I think, the other panelists will talk about their experience as well, but not a good feeling.
Yeah, I can speak on this next. I agree with everything Ezra said. I think we'll expand on it later. Slightly different, but kind of similar. I think something that a lot of youth in the vegan movement find threatening is when there is a lack of inclusivity, diversity, anti-racist dialogue, and a movement that has been known to be very white supremacist oriented, and accountability overall. I think these are things that are very off-putting to youth that are interested in this space and they want to be involved, but there needs to be more accountability and work done to address these issues before it feels like a safe space for us to actually enter into it. And a second thing that I also think is a threat too, this is more a long-term threat, is the lack of opportunity in different fields in this movement to actually pursue after completing our education. For example, like you think if you're interested in medical field or finance, there's a plethora of opportunities once you graduate, whether it be internships or entry-level positions. But I know several of my peers, they're vegan, they have interest in the space, but they don't see a lot of viable career pathways for them after they finish their higher education. And everyone has their own reasons for why they're seeking a type of career, whether it's overall stability or financial security, for example. But I think that there needs to be more opportunities for just regular youth to actually continue their activism after they leave education. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Sarah and I have been talking about this topic before, about how personally for both of us, and I'm sure our other panelists too, it's been kind of difficult to find opportunities. And you have to really know specifically, like, I want to get an opportunity that involves vegan advocacy. And I did a lot of internet scouring, and I still do, to try to find these opportunities. And a lot of times you really have to put yourself out there and, apply for things that are pretty adult centric and don't really have, a specific youth slant, but just try and reach out. And, a good way to get opportunities is by networking and talking to people and just like cold emailing people, which is also advice that Sarah gave me. And it's kind of scary to do that. And I think that's a barrier to a lot of youth being able to, fully use their network and gain the opportunities that they are there, they do exist, but they're hard to find. So I think I should give a shout out to this panel specifically as being, a great example of a way to lift up youth voices. And there are opportunities out there, but it's hard to find. So I think we need to have more of a dialogue around bringing those opportunities to the forefront and just so that students know about these things. Yeah.
I think, a big threat to the vegan movement is just, becoming dejected because the people around you don't, share a similar viewpoint. So just to remember, there are people who are supporting you, whether you find them on social media or like at an event, you go to the people that you may be around day to day that don't necessarily show your share your viewpoints. That doesn't mean that your view isn't important and that you shouldn't, keep fighting for what you're fighting for.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for sharing those concerns that many of us have within this space. Everything that you all said is so valid and so real. And I'm sure a lot of young people that are tuning in resonate with a lot of this, whether that's the fear of being rejected from a possible opportunity that is slim and far and few in between, or feeling as though once they graduate, there won't be that position for them that they're passionate about, and that fear. There's so many different things that need to be changed, but I'm really happy that you all are utilizing this experience to share your voices. And hopefully there's that one person out there that is willing to make a space at their table because they know that young people hold the power to make that change. And so moving on to a next question, how do you effectively empower youth in the movement? And this is from your point of view on how definitely people who are more stable or more secure within this movement, maybe have been in it for 30, 40 years, how do they themselves empower young people? What are some tips and tricks for them to begin making change for themselves and for their own spaces? And then also, do you think that exploitation ever occurs within this space? You all kind of touched on it before, but if someone is willing to open up their audience for young people, how do they ensure that they're taking the necessary steps so that those students feel as if their voices matter?
can start this one. I think, empowering youth it's a very broad statement. And there's a lot of different ways that you can take it, this panel being one of them. Um, if if we're talking about like a specific company or something that is in the vegan movement, offering internships, offering mentorship, is a great way to do that. And, it doesn't have to be a super big role, just, allowing a couple youth to maybe like shadow you or kind of see what your day-to-day life is like, working in whatever field you work in. And also like for individual adults, just opening yourself up to mentoring youth and giving advice. I have asked a lot of adults for advice, and they're always very open and willing to help. And I think that's a great way to empower youth. And specifically around career coaching, I think that's a big one because while we're students, school is kind of our full-time job, and then advocacy is a big extracurricular. But then the question always remains like, what am I going to do after I graduate? I want this to be, my major mark in the world, but I don't know how to do that. And I think, providing experiences and advice is super helpful.
Yeah, and I think Morgan touched on very well what like organizations can do, but as to what if you're already in contact with youth, or what if you already have them on board? How can you best empower them? And I think a lot of the times we overcomplicate it when it just really comes down to how do you really interact, empathize, and listen to an individual. And I think what's important is ask the youth, what do they want to say? What message do they want to get out through their work and across the world? And what kind of work do they actually want to do as well? What do they want to explore? What do they want to learn? And I think it's just very important that you understand the difference between empowering their voices versus constructing them. And as to whether exploitation occurs, I do think it occurs, and it's hard for me to like see it. And I think it is for many others because we're still developing individuals. We're still learning how to like form our own boundaries, respect ourselves, understand ourselves, all these things. So it's harder for us to identify when it's happening and stand up against it. But I think in my experience, I've noticed when funding comes into play, because we do live in a capitalist society, a lot of organizations do need funding, and or like promotion comes into play too. I think things get a little messy because it's very rare for a young person to make waves in this space because it's so new and it's still growing its youth population. So I think it makes our advocacy like very rare, and it makes people want to use it either for their own benefit or to carry out their vision at the youth's university or school. So it sounds heavy and it sounds like a really huge responsibility. Like, how do I not do this? Because I know it's very easy to do it without even realizing it. Because, like I said, we're still learning ourselves how we want to be respected. And I think really just ask yourself, have you really communicated well with the youth you're working with? Really figured out what do they want to say? What do they want their voice to be? What are they comfortable with? What are they consenting to? Because ultimately, we just need our passions fostered. And I think communication is just the best way to avoid any exploitation happening, because I'm sure no one in this space would want that, and especially the youth don't want that either.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of really good points that were touched on. I guess I just wanted to say that it's important to have a safe space for to foster questions and also curiosity. You never want to make youth feel like they're inferior or insecure about what they believe in, and just making sure that they know that you're hearing their voice and that you're supporting them along the way, with the decisions that they're making, because it is a learning journey for them.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add to that, but I definitely would echo the sentiment of letting young people make decisions. I think for me, I think, when you try and it stood out to me when Sarah talked about empowering youth voices versus constructing them. I think that's really interesting. And I think when uh, there's an organization or a group going on and a young person gets involved and there's something that the group is already working on, you don't force people into that. Allowing people to decide what they're working on is really powerful. Not just for reasons that Sarah talked about, but also because, I've worked with groups before that were sort of working on things, and then I jumped in and I wasn't super interested in what they were working on, but they tried to loop me in, and it just sort of, it's uncomfortable. And then I didn't want to be involved anymore. And then I sort of pulled away. And luckily, I was able to find other groups to work with and other people to work with. But I think for a lot of people, especially young people, when they're coming into a group and feel like they have to do whatever is going on, if that's not really what they want to be doing, then you're just pushing people away. And advocacy is only sustainable when, there are a million things that makes advocacy sustainable or unsustainable, but one of the key things is it needs to be something that people feel passionate about. People need to actually want to be doing the work that they're doing. And so I think allowing young people to not just have a voice in what they're doing, but to have a leadership role in what's going on, especially with something like plant-based school food that I know a lot of us have worked on, which pertains directly to students. I don't see why students shouldn't be playing leadership roles in decisions around plant-based school food, because students are really the only ones, other than teachers, who are consuming school food.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of us probably needed to hear so many of just like the messages that each of us has brought to the table. For most of us, we've probably been in this movement going on 2 to 3 years, which is a big chunk of our lives considering how old some of us are. And so just having these areas and these spaces to communicate how we're feeling, the dynamics that we have maybe with different leaders within this movement, all of those things are so valuable. So I thank you all once again for sharing your voices, because I've learned so much just from asking that one question. And hopefully moving forward, we're able to communicate in ways that we think will most benefit us once we take that seat at that table. And so moving on to our second question, what does effective activism look like to you? Do you have a theory for change that you follow?
Yeah, I can take this one first. So, I keep referring to the composting program, but I feel like it was a very important moment for me. So just making sure that, a program is long lasting, or trying to, and then making sure that even after like you leave that institution or organization, that, things are still going well. Um, and then what I would need from myself, or sorry, my theory of change that I follow, um, no, I would say to just have hope that the people around me will be able to, to continue that program forward. For the composting program, we had a video that was recorded, and it was sent to other schools in the county. So ours was sort of used, almost like an example for others to follow. So that was really cool because, you know, it wasn't just to inspire change in the school, but also elsewhere, for others who may be trying to start a similar program.
I can speak on this, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, I've always been a very community-oriented person, and like on the individual. So To me, I think effective activism probably looks a little bit different than I think most people. For me, it's more I can see people's choices change. I see them becoming more conscious, and I see institutions actually start to move in the right direction, or at least start to acknowledge these issues. Like, for example, I've been getting a lot of messages from my friends recently, just the last month, because I've been doing a lot of advocacy on my campus, and they've been telling me like I've been inspired to start trying out a vegetarian or vegan diet or just consume less animal products, and that's
I would just
that's what effective activism looks to me. And as for a theory of change, I think it's very similar. Mine is really focused on connecting with either the individual, the organization, the community, or the institution. Because I really believe that everyone has something that they care about very deeply. And if you can connect with them over that and integrate your advocacy, change can happen. But I will say it really does require a lot of patience. It can be very difficult at times. And I think it is crucial that you keep, like, I always keep myself accountable on my end to make sure I'm still staying true to what I'm advocating for. Because I think it's very easy sometimes when you're trying to meet them halfway that you lose sight of why you're here in the first place and what you're really pushing for, and you're not compromising on your values. But I think that's typically what my activism looks like usually.
I think a lot about theories of change and strategy and all that kind of thing because it's really important. Unfortunately, there are only so many activists in the world, and there's only so much time and energy that we can, as individuals or collectively as a movement, put into advocacy. So it's really important that we, um, you know, advocate and do activism in the most effective ways that we can. Um, I often hear people talk about like the vegan world as the end goal. Um, for me, that is not the end goal. For me, that is sort of, for me, the end goal is like social justice, it's climate justice, it's animal liberation, and veganism is something that needs to happen in order to achieve all of those things. But the goal is not veganism itself. That's just sort of one step towards all those other things. And but obviously, like towards a vegan world or towards the final goal of climate justice, social justice, animal liberation, we can't just go from point A to point B, like from where we are to there. So I think sort of baby steps almost are really important because we can't go from here to there all of a sudden. We need to go, one point at a time. And I think it's important to go first after the lowest hanging fruit. We can go the things that are going to be like easier to go after and are still going to make a change. I think we should do those things first. Not to say that we shouldn't do things that are going to be hard, but in terms of like doing things effectively, if there are two things that are both going to be effective and one is easier and one is harder, I think it's important to focus on the easier thing just so we can get more change done more quickly. And for the same reason, I'm a big fan of pressure campaigns. I think they're really effective. I've had a lot of experience and positive experiences with them. I tend to be a big fan of more systemic change as well, rather than like individual outreach things, which are also great and also important. And I always like very community-based, sort of democratically structured and planned organizing.
I really love what you said, Ezra, about how, veganism itself isn't the end goal. It's more just like collective liberation and collective justice, including animals and humans and the environment. Because I think that a lot of times, even I have personally thought that, like, oh, if everyone in the world was vegan, that would solve everything. But I really like that you pointed that out. And I think that's important to keep in mind. And as far as my sort of like advocacy approach goes, or my theory of change, I have learned that for me, it's best to focus on positive change rather than um, negative. And I'll try to explain that in the best way I can. But when I was vegetarian, right right before I went vegan, I visited an animal sanctuary, and it was sweet. It's Sweet Farm, actually. They used to be in the Bay Area, California. Now they're in upstate New York, but it's a wonderful animal sanctuary if you ever get a chance to visit. And I was with my parents, and we were getting a tour, and the founder is vegan and was talking to me about the difference between vegetarianism and veganism. And I thought that I was doing everything possible by being a vegetarian, and he was telling me basically you should go vegan, but in a really constructive and educational way, rather than sort of a demonizing way of like, oh, you're just vegetarian, you're not doing enough. And I think that that's a big issue in the movement, is that a lot of people feel like they can't get their foot in the door, they can't, be an activist, unless they're, the perfect vegan, like doing everything possible in their lives. Um, and so in the past, I would, talk to people about animal agriculture and try to show them slaughterhouse footage and footage of, the dairy industry. And I still repost stuff on my Instagram stories that shows that, but I don't shove it in people's faces as much because I got lots of negative feedback from that. And it can sometimes push people further away from the movement. And so instead, I try to focus on positive change, like increasing plant-based options, making vegan food the default. I am working right now at NYU on a Greener by Default campaign, with the Greener by Default Coalition, which is similar to, but not connected to the actual organization Greener by Default, but we love them too. And where you just kind of try to make that the default option so that people, without knowing it, will just choose plant-based food. So I kind of follow that broadly as, I guess, sort of a theory of change, and just focusing on positive reinforcement and getting people excited about plant-based food rather than demonizing people for the burger that they ate yesterday, because that's in the past and there's nothing you can do about that anymore. So yeah, I think that's my way of doing things, or at least trying to do things.
All of these theories for change are, I think, also unique, but they all have a bottom line that I think is very similar. And I really appreciate y'all answering that question. I think that for a lot of us, we know that veganism isn't popular. For a lot of people, this is something that is on the last of their agenda to hear. And so for us, not only are we curating it in a way that we want people to change, but also want them to maybe become conscious about their decisions. But we're also trying to do it in a way where we know that we're probably going to be disliked for our own opinion. So it's a really difficult space sometimes to advocate in, but I really do applaud you all for not letting that stop you and just for keep going, because I know there are a lot of people that need to hear these words, and that maybe are vegetarian, Morgan, like you said, and that just need that one compassionate figure to talk with them and give them just different ways of how they can see the world a little bit differently. Because I know for me, if it wasn't for compassionate people around me, or even, compassionate social media figures that I looked up to, then I probably would not be where I am right now. So moving on to another question, I think that is really important. What do you need from adults in order to maximize your collective efforts? And what do you need from yourself?
I can start this one off. I think I'll more so speak on what I need from myself, because I think it is something that it's very easy to neglect when you're young and you're starting off in advocacy. And I'm sure my rest of my co-panelists will say wonderful things about both. So I think for myself, something that I hope will resonate with a lot of young activists is that you get really angry. You definitely get very angry at this point. You get very frustrated with friends and families. It's just the nature of the work and the space that we're in. So just always I always tell myself, like, remember to be kind, be empathetic, and remind yourself that the work I do is also valuable and deserves to be valued and appreciated as well. And always keep that at the center of what you're doing, so that you don't lose your passion or get turned away because it's hard. That's something I really believe in because that's what I've done. I've always kept in the center. And even though, like, throughout the years, there's been difficult periods or other temptations, I've always stuck with it because I think that really helped me. And I also think this is really applicable to all young people, but it really is okay to move on to other projects or organizations or interests in life if you feel like it's changing. We really are still learning about ourselves and we're still growing. And I think we really need to give ourselves grace and allow that to happen, because that's what will allow us to find our true potential. And just to add a little bit, I hope that if there's adults on call, this is something we need for ourselves. And I think adults can really help with that because with that exploration and trying different things out and seeing what works best for you, um, like opportunities and engagements and just general upliftness and all those things really go a long way. And I that's why I'm always super grateful to my mentors for that exact reason because I think that's why I'm here. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Sarah that um, the thing that we sort of need from ourselves is to take ourselves seriously because there are a lot of people who won't take us seriously, um, and to just remember that they're like they're wrong. We just need to take ourselves seriously and do things. And I think like we don't need adults to be activists. We don't need like we can just do things by ourselves as kids. I've worked in a number of groups where we get a ton of really cool stuff done, and the oldest person is like 17. Maybe, having a career that's fully in the movement, that's a different story. But um, being able to do things after school or outside of work hours or whatever, like we don't need adults to be part of it. We can just do things by ourselves. And I think that's really important for people to remember.
Yeah, I think that something that, I need to remember for myself is just to keep the hope, that our climate will get better. Because climate anxiety is a very real thing. We're very unsure about our current situation and about our future, and it is in jeopardy. So I think we have to keep in mind that we have each other, and there are people out there who are, creating change right now. And then I feel like we just need to keep that within us so we don't lose hope. And then something from adults, I think the first step is just for them to listen. They don't always have to agree with our stances, but I feel like it's really important that they know that the youth care and they know that the youth want to create change. So if they do listen, then they might just change something too. And since they tend to be in higher positions of power, then I feel like that would be very effective.
Yeah, I totally agree and second what you all said. And I kind of touched on this before, but as far as help from adults, I think I mentioned like career advice stuff, um, opportunities or mentorship, and just like um, communicating in a way that is peer to peer rather than, adult to young person, and having a professional dynamic because a lot of us are ready for that and really appreciate that. And then as far as what I need from myself, I've definitely learned last semester that I need to prioritize my commitments and make sure that, what I'm the activism that I am doing is fulfilling to me, and I don't like have my foot in the door to 5 different things that I don't have enough energy to commit to individually, so then I end up not really doing much. And that's been something that I've been learning throughout the years, but to just, pick like 1 or 2 main projects that I wanna work on and commit my energy to them, and then they will actually succeed.
All right, I think we heard from everyone. So once again, thank you all for answering that question. I think that just in this movement, we need to learn to give ourselves grace and that compassion. We have it for so many different areas within this space, and just reflecting that back onto ourselves is really important. And I really resonate with what you said, Morgan, about wanting to do so many different things at once. But sometimes you just have to calm yourself down and say it's okay, because there's still so much time to be able to make change. And also, there's a lot of different ripple effects within this work. Sometimes I see one thing that I might have done and it's crossing over within another organization. And that's why I love how this community is small, but it's also getting a lot larger. And there's just so much room for learning from each other. So there really is no rush. And moving on to another question that I have for you all, which I'm excited to hear. What are some successes you have had during your time in organizing? And this can be from a lot of different angles. It doesn't just have to be I did this school event. It can be whatever you think is a success to you.
I can start this one off. To preface, I feel like I've kind of been everywhere in this space the last 4 years, so some of it may sound a bit, and it's kind of a flow, but it's a little bit random at the same time. I think looking back in high school, I feel like one of my biggest successes with organizing was I focused on the school food in my high school, and at the time I started off, 70% of my school was Asian American, but our school food was the standard American diet. And to this day, I think one of my proudest accomplishments is that I worked with the district nutrition team, and I got more culturally appropriate plant-based menu items into the school district. So it started off in the high school, but I believe now it's in the entire school district. And the project has continued since I graduated 2 years ago, which is amazing. But I think that one was also very personal to me because it was food from my culture. And I know, like, especially with 70% of our school being people of color, it was very meaningful to several students there. Um, and I think moving on to like my time in university, I feel like one of my biggest accomplishments there was I found a community of plant-based people, very like-minded, and I co-founded 2 organizations with them at UCLA. And I think that has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And I fully transitioned as well to being vegan when I first came to university. So it's those 2 things were very hand in hand. And then with my organizations in college, we have just finished doing some very incredible initiatives. I'm sure many of us are familiar with Veganuary, but it's the 31-day challenge to go vegan in January. And I spearheaded we brought the challenge to UCLA, and we did a specific Veganuary times UCLA challenge. And it was the first pilot of any university doing that. And it was just incredible. We got, I think, nearly 70 pledges from a mix of omnivores, vegetarians, pescatarians, vegans. And I think that has been very rewarding. And we also had an entirely separate campaign as well that we labeled the Plant Power Revolution, but we did 8 events in 1 week. And all of them was aimed towards revamping, making veganism very accessible, educating people on it. And one of them was a Veg Fest held here at UCLA. It was humongous, like 800 plus attendees. And I can't take the credit for everything. It's all my organizers at UCLA as well. They're incredible. But it was just a very rewarding experience, and people all over LA came out to it. And I think to me, that really was the first time in my life I could see the effects of my activism in front of my eyes. And it was very exhausting, but it was 100% worth it. I'm so glad we did it. And I think just overall, my biggest successes is just my own personal journey too with organizing. I feel like I've just developed a lot as a person. I've made so many connections, and I just feel so solidified in where I am now in my life in the vegan space and where I want to keep going moving forward. And I think that's always the biggest success when I look back.
That's so amazing, Sarah, and I'm so happy to hear that. And I think that the last sentence you said is something that I hope every young activist feels at some point, that they're satisfied and they're happy with the work that they're doing and that they feel solidified, because it can be draining. But once that emotion, I think that that outrules a lot of different things. So I wish that to all of you.
That was really inspiring to hear, and I've been sort of following the plant-powered revolution updates on Instagram, and it's been very exciting to see everything. So, congratulations. And similarly to Sarah, I also worked on the plant-based on the school food in my high school, and campaigned for plant-based options. And that was an amazing experience. We got some really awesome meals offered. Again, also, more culturally appropriate too, because Sarah and I are both from the Bay Area, so there's a lot of Asian students there, and so we got some really awesome meals like vegan pho and burritos. And I recently followed up with the nutrition services director, and she sent a picture of this delicious chana masala dish that they offered, all vegan. So that was an amazing experience, and I really loved being able to tie my passions to the community that I was already in at my school. And slightly unrelated to veganism, but still just like a success that I personally had was gaining a lot of leadership skills and just people skills through that campaign, learning how to, speak in front of the school board and, email people if they don't respond to you, emailing them again, being in a professional setting and asking people for stuff, and then knowing how to navigate a campaign to actually get the stuff that you want. Um, that was super valuable and something that I had never done before. So, yeah.
I think that one of my biggest successes during my time in organizing is just education. So there were a couple times in my county where there were countywide meetings with different student leaders. And so, a couple of students, including myself, presented on, environmental programs and environmental problems. And, some students don't even know what composting is. So it was just very cool to see or to give them that knowledge so that hopefully that they can carry that on for the rest of their life. And some programs, sometimes there are no recycling programs in schools, and so we were able to inspire some youth to try and start their own at their schools. So it was just really cool to see the knowledge being passed down. And also at the end of the year, there was this countywide environmental summit, and it was just a fun way to bring awareness to environmental problems. And there were educational speakers and environmental speakers, just to see what opportunities and careers there are out there. There was a boat ride on the Anacostia River, which was very nice. And yeah, just a lot of cool learning opportunities and some hands-on activities that really engaged the students. So it was just really fun and really educational.
Some highlights for me have been, I think, most of my. So I've done a couple of local policies in the town of Brookline, Massachusetts, that have been really exciting for me. Um, One was a school committee policy that passed 2 years ago now, so it pertains to the entire school district and required, among other things, that the district move away from unsustainable foods, including but not limited to meat, poultry, and fish, and move instead towards plant-based foods. And that also the district will not serve any meat on Mondays and will have vegan options every day. So it's been really exciting seeing that policy implemented over the last 2 years now. This year we have vegan options every day. And actually just earlier this week, I confirmed that starting next year, 50% of the food served in all the public schools of Brookline, from K through 12th grade, 50% of it is going to be plant-based. So I'm really excited about that. And I had also spent a long time over the last year and a half lobbying state legislators for some legislation pertaining to plant-based school food. And at first that was a bill, but then we dropped the bill and ended up trying to tack something onto the budget. And a little bit ago now, we were successful in adding 3 paragraphs to the state of Massachusetts fiscal year 24 budget that creates a commission to study the availability of vegetarian and vegan options in Massachusetts. And after spending, I think it'll be a year, maybe 2, studying that, they're going to make some recommendations, and likely we'll see a change in Massachusetts state law. So I'm very excited about that.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for sharing that incredible information. I believe everyone has gone and shared. So moving on to our next question. I think that for a lot of young people, it can be intimidating sometimes going into this space, and whether it be people that don't look like you stepping into rooms where the conversation might be about the environment, might be about animal rights, or just trying to create more plant-based options. A lot of these things might not be so reflective of who we are and what our communities look like. And so that can be a drawback for a lot of people who have so many talents, but are too afraid to maybe speak up. And so what advice would you give to other youth who might have these really bright ideas, but don't know how to speak up and say it, who might be too afraid to disrupt and take action? What advice would you give to them to illuminate their work and to make a change, and really just to show up in these spaces, attend a meeting, attend a panel, take that internship?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would say one thing to know for all the students or youth watching this is this movement has some of the most kindest, most empathetic souls I have ever met in my life. And I think being in LA, where there's so many of them here, this is really just come to fruition, like that it is really true. And I would say it's okay if it feels very intimidating. I think it's very normal. I've definitely been nervous or intimidated several times throughout my life too, getting involved in various projects or anything of the sort. Try your best to stay confident. Like I said, your passion and your care, it will always be in the center of your work, and that is always invaluable. It doesn't matter what else is there, because as long as you're there for the right reasons, the right people will notice that and they will empower you. And I think if it's really feeling intimidating, like, you can reach out to individuals one-on-one, you can message them, email them, especially those that maybe you feel are more aligned with how you look or what you're interested in, or any other demographic. But you will find a good response. I am almost 100% sure. This place is a lot more diverse than I think it originally comes off, and it took me some time as well to really find the people that I felt represented me. And once I did, I stayed in touch. I made sure I followed them. I would see something from them very frequently, and it made me feel very accepted. And I think just kind of overcoming that first step, like, I belong here, is really helpful. And then after that, I think Ezra touched on this earlier, but you can do anything you want to do. do not be afraid. You don't need to like have some big fancy background in like policy or go get a PhD to do anything of the sort. I mean, I think a lot of us on this call, we started doing this kind of stuff. We're in high school, no degree, not really super a part of any kind of organization, but we just did it. And I think that's really like, no, you are capable of doing that as well. As long as your heart is in the right place and you keep pushing for it and you seek out guidance when you need it. Also, the other thing that was really helpful to me was finding other youth that are interested in the same thing as you. Community is really important to me personally. And if you feel like you're that kind of person, I think we were just mentioning this before the panel started. The student network in this space exists, and like we are part of it. It is very tangible now. You can probably talk to one person and a second person, and somehow they already know each other because we're all so connected now. We all are in this for the same reasons. So I think finding that community is really crucial. And I know if I ever got a message one day randomly on Instagram or LinkedIn from any youth, I know I would respond in a heartbeat and get them connected and make them feel support in whatever they need to do. But yeah.
I would add that particularly in policy-based advocacy, we live in a democracy, which is beautiful. And the idea of a government by the people, for the people, being young doesn't make you not part of the people, right? Government is here to serve us, like for us to run it. And I think that extends beyond just government too. I think we live in like a world and a society that is run, or should be run by the people, for the people. It certainly is run by the people, but I think it's our step as a member of the people to make sure that it is the world that we want to live in, because it's the world that we have to live in, and it's our future. And no one can tell us that we don't belong, because we do.
Yeah, I love all of that. I would say if you're a student watching this, or youth, you don't have to be in school, and you want to get involved and don't know how, I would say start with whatever the thing is that seems exciting to you. Um, During the pandemic, I couldn't really do that much, so that much in-person stuff. So I started a YouTube channel and posted like vegan recipe videos. I posted about my oatmeal a lot, and that was super fun. And a lot of people um, watched it and like got inspired to eat plant-based. And this could be anything. Like if you are interested in art, you could create like a zine, create art around our food system. If you like to, I don't know, if you like to give speeches, then go give a talk at your school. Align your next presentation with our food system. And you don't have to like have a huge big project, and you can still incorporate all these values within the typical things that you have to do at school with your assignments. And then also, Sarah, you mentioned this, but I want to second it to the importance of finding community. And before I went vegan and before I did the New Roots internship, I didn't know any vegans, I don't think. And I did feel kind of isolated. And it's been so amazing to meet other youth my age who have the same passions. And I was able to do that through the New Roots internship. So I would recommend look up New Roots Institute and check out their summer program. And that was just all through meeting people online. So you don't even need to, be in the same area as people. But then also, join clubs at your school, start a club at your school. My school didn't have any plant-based related clubs, so I started one. And yeah, being able to talk to people my age about these issues and realize that, I'm not alone in this fight and I'm not alone in feeling frustrated at times and just kind of being able to vent has been huge and has really kept my motivation going in times when it was kind of difficult. So I would say start with whatever seems exciting to you and find a community and reach out to, I think any of us on the panel would be totally open to communication. If you're a youth, you can look up our names. If you look up my name on LinkedIn, I can message with you, and on Instagram too. So we are here too for support.
Yeah, I agree. I used to be, kind of a more timid person, especially when I first started being in my school's environmental club. And then I realized that it really wasn't that scary to just speak up, even if it's a question. It's always good to learn more. And I just attended a lot of events that I thought would be informative and help me with my own understanding of what the world was like. And volunteering is always really good too. I feel like talking to people is helpful because who knows, they might lead you to an area where you never thought you'd be. Um, in, in my in my county, I volunteered with this group of people, and it was just community composting. It was really cool, and these people they must have been like 40, 50 years older than me. Like there weren't really any youth, but it was just so cool to talk to them. And it was vermicomposting, so it was with worms, and I haven't done that before. And so they taught me about the process, and it was just really exciting stuff. Just to learn how to do that and how the process works. And I had an internship on a sustainable farm. Um, so and I wasn't, I wasn't sure that's what I was going to be doing, but it's good to just, go out there and explore things that maybe you're unfamiliar with. And now I know more about how sustainable agriculture works and how people can try to provide for themselves. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of really cool experiences out there, and I feel like the best way to find those out, or maybe to get in contact with somebody that who may be more familiar with environmental related careers or opportunities. And just like Morgan was saying, the panelists are a good resource. And yeah, I would just encourage you to step out of your comfort zone because there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and you'll never know where you'll end up.
I completely agree with everything you all are saying. I know that before I joined this community, I also felt isolated. I didn't know any vegans, young vegans at that. And so I am just so grateful that after taking a step into this community, I've been able to find a lot of like-minded individuals like you all. When I was forming this panel, it did not take me more than a day to figure out who to reach out to, just because there's such a tight-knit community that we have formed and that I'm so grateful for. So for those of you that are watching, take that first step, just engage, immerse yourself into this community. And you don't need to be vegan to take that first step. You can do it just as you are right now, and that change might come. So it really is all about just setting yourself in the right mindset, and just shaking it all off, because like Sarah said, you can do anything. The world is, it's all up to you to curate it how you want. And for our final question, I know I wish I could do this all night. Like, this has just been so enriching. I feel like I have been inspired and energized for the next year. So I'm really happy we had this conversation. But are there any projects you all are working on, or have you started a new position that you would like to share?
I can go first. So yeah, like just this past week, I started a position with this organization called Friends of the Earth, and if you're unfamiliar with it, it's basically an organization focused on advocacy for fighting to create a just world. And I'm super excited to be doing this. I mean, after last summer advocating for plant-based foods on Capitol Hill, I just felt like I wanted to do more impactful policy work related to food and agriculture. And this is exactly what I was looking for. And I've been learning a lot about the harms of industrial agriculture, both on climate and on people. And now I feel like I'm finally, acting on what I think. So it's super exciting, and I'm glad to be part of that.
So happy to hear that.
Yeah, I can go next. So I think for me, I mentioned it a bit earlier. I just finished a whole bunch of projects at UCLA. And what we're starting to do now, after a bit of rest, is we're going to look at our Veganuary pilot program and think about how we want to make this more accessible for other universities in the US or possibly even internationally, for them to implement something similar in the upcoming years, or just inspire change in their universities. And in addition to that, we're also looking at doing some Earth Day campaigns with the LA Vegan organization. So there's already a bunch being organized in April, and we're trying to get involved there too, show up, volunteer, or help organize it, whatever we can do. And then as for a more professional job side of it, I have been working at balance.org, it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on the health aspect of plant-based and encouraging like plant-based instead of the traditional standard American diet. And I've been working there on a pilot program called Nutrition for Families, which is targeting specifically how to raise families, so children, adolescents, when the individual's pregnant. Oh, there's the website, yes, how to do that on a plant-based diet. So it's a very niche field, and I'm helping develop some resources there so families can use it, since there's a large generation of vegans on the upcoming, and I think a lot of us will probably want to start families, so I imagine this will be helpful. And yeah, then just looking to see my next focus is continuing to bring food and food systems more in the scene in public health. So that's my new adventure, hopefully next stop in the summer or just next year. Yeah, we'll see where I go.
That's very exciting. I can't wait to hear all about it, Sarah. And congratulations, Maya, on your new position. I got the email from you. She sent out an action alert. I think it was earlier this week, and I was like, oh, there she is. So very exciting. A couple of things that I'm working on right now. The public schools of Brookline does not teach sixth grade health for whatever reason. They teach it, in fifth grade, they teach it in seventh grade, they teach it in high school. They don't teach sixth grade health. So I am working with a couple of wellness teachers from the district to develop a sixth grade wellness curriculum, and to, as part of the curriculum, teach students about the importance of plant-based eating. I'm also doing a little bit of work right now with some of my friends about dissection and dissection alternatives in school. And for a long time, I've done a lot of fur protests, protesting stores that sell, mink fur, fox fur. But we have a group called Raise Activism, which is like a grassroots collective liberation, sort of animal rights focused group in Boston. And we're starting to transition towards foie gras, which is disgusting. It's fat, like inflamed goose or duck liver that is inflamed through a very cruel process that I won't get into. But so we're starting to protest restaurants that sell foie gras.
That's awesome and super inspiring to hear what everyone's doing, and congratulations to everyone. Right now, I'm a freshman at NYU, so I just started last semester, and the main project that I'm working on is I'm campaign coordinator for the Greener by Default coalition at NYU, and our main goal is to we're not specifically a club. We call ourselves a coalition because we kind of just want to be like a connector and a networker for a bunch of on-campus organizations like clubs and offices, and any on-campus organization that wants to participate, and also dining halls, hopefully, and trying to get them to make greener by default commitments, which means committing to, when they have events that involve food, serving at least 80% vegan food. And the idea there is so that by default, people will eat vegan food, just because that's what's there. And if there is pushback and people, really want to have their animal products, then there is that 20% animal product option, just so that you don't encounter negative pushback from there being no meat options. But the idea is that primarily people will be like, oh, food, I'm going to eat it. And it just happens to be vegan. And then they also have a positive experience with vegan food. So that's the main goal of our organization. And we're planning a plant-based food festival for April for Earth Month, specifically looking at the environmental standpoint of eating a plant-based diet. And we're reaching out to a bunch of restaurants nearby and local plant-based food brands to come and table at this event. And that would be great for them because they can get connected with a bunch of students, and we would be able to share plant-based food with a bunch of people on campus. So that is the current project at school right now, and I'm just really excited to host that event and get a lot more dialogue going and just excitement around plant-based food.
Well, that is our final question. And I cannot express how grateful I am for you all being on here and speaking truth and speaking honesty and inspiring so many young people, and just all people at this point. You all have said so many things that just like cross over to what so many people need to hear. I feel so inspired, and I hope that each of you do too. Are there any final remarks? Does anyone want to plug anything else? This is your time.
I want to plug Kennedy for being also an amazing activist. And, the four of us talked about things that we've been up to for the last long time, hour and a half, I don't know how long. But Kennedy is also an incredible activist. I think, all met Kennedy through activism. She is like all over the place at her school, like running clubs, doing like federal level advocacy. She's amazing. And I'm really glad not just to know you, but to be able to call you a friend, and to have done activism together. And I'm really glad that we got to do this tonight.
Thank you so much, Ezra. I really appreciate that. And the same goes for all of you all. I'm so happy that I can call you all my friends, and just for having this panel. It means the world. And this is the reason why I do what I do. So thank you all so much. I'm so grateful. So thank you all to our viewers. We've had quite a few people in here listening, watching. This video will be saved onto the Black Veg Society Instagram. If you ever want to go back and a YouTube channel, if you ever want to go back and have a watch, or share it with friends and family. So once again, thank you so much to everyone who has been viewing. And if you want to learn more about Black Veg Society, you can visit blackvegsociety.org. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, please consider donating to Black Veg Society so that we can continue this impactful work. But other than that, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for joining. Bye, everyone.